Hi everyone, and welcome back to a new episode of Egocentips with me, Adrian. So this quote, "Our greatness is the ability to remake ourselves," or maybe it's more of a life value. Regardless of what we call it, it's quite fantastic, and it refers to our ability to change paths. If we have worked at a job for a long time, if we live a special lifestyle that we identify with, if we are stuck in habits and we just feel stuck, we have the ability to change that. Of course, taking charge of these changes can be very difficult, but if we create the right conditions for it, we can make it happen. The quote also holds a message of hope for each and every one of us. But it also is a fundamental truth, since it plays a big role in humans' ability to adapt to ever-changing environments. This quote originates from Mohandas Gandhi, also known as Mahatma Gandhi. He is, amongst other things, known for his strive for India's independence from England through protests. But unlike many protests we see today that are driven by violence, they were driven by the belief that peace, love and respect is the best path towards positive changes for all people. Gandhi, amongst other individuals of great influence throughout history, can sometimes almost be viewed as a special breed of people, like their personalities were given to them by perhaps fate, and that we, normal, unknown people, did not receive this capacity. But of course, looking at this with objective eyes, we can realize that there is no big difference between people of great fame and normal people like perhaps you and me. We are all human beings with different life stories and challenges. We are all normal people. In the end, this believed difference manifests in having goals. To reach this goal, we need motivation. Sadly, motivation is fluctuating, and sometimes it will feel very tough for all of us. But with the right tips and tools, we can learn to persist and stay on our path towards reaching whatever goal that is in our sight. Acquiring these tips and tools can many times be very difficult, and it requires our effort to find them. And of course, there is not enough time in one's life to either learn or become an expert in everything. But one very beautiful thing about the world of today is that we have access to a global network of information. What we need to do is learn how to use this information and network properly. By using the information that driven people around the world have gained and shared and add it to our own knowledge. In other words, we do not have to reinvent the wheel for ourselves. I'm a strong believer that our ability to remake ourselves is something that everyone should at least think about. but even better, to try to apply to their own lives. Whether or not you feel fine in your day-to-day life, or if you feel close to anger, or if you have trouble sleeping, if you want to implement healthy habits for the environment, or if you feel any type of suffering. It could be mental or physical disease, or that you don't have any healthy relationship with others. Whatever it may be, we can always find aspects in our lives that we can build on. It can be preventative changes in habits that in the long run will do you good, or it can be lifestyle changes that help you to reach whatever goal that you have in your sight. So there are certainly many different routes and starting points to all this, and this is a very good thing because it means that we don't have to have the same basis. What I would like to do is give you insight in my starting point, in how I became an active user, in my ability to remake myself. And I am by no means an expert in these subjects, but I have a big interest and a daily will to learn new things. By learning these new things and applying them, I've seen some big positive changes in myself, and people around me have also noted these changes. So maybe my starting point can at least maybe be an inspiration or spark an interest for you who don't know where to start. For me, it started not with a big change in lifestyle or the one pro tip on how to change one's life. For me, it began with having a perspective on ourselves. I think it can be quite tricky to get a sense for a new perspective, especially if it differs from your own. It will take a lot of focus, some reflection, and maybe most of all, to rid ourselves from any desire to judge what's different from our own ideas. To help us view this perspective in the best light possible, I decided to make a two-part video instead of one very long one. Hopefully, this will help us to digest what's being said a little bit better. I also encourage you not to get stuck or look at information or facts as the most important parts of this video. They are just there to help build a picture of what I'm trying to share. And we can also implement 2 tips in how to maintain our focus. One is to rid ourselves of distractions, like perhaps your cell phone. If not, you're watching this video on the cell phone. The other one is to do something consciously, like taking a deep breath and a long exhalation to really bring ourselves to this moment. And now we can be open-minded and tell ourselves to view this perspective as something interesting to listen to. Now, being open, we can ask ourselves a question. What are we? I have always loved nature, and I've now worked with animals for 7 years. And this has kept me quite close to our own origins and one answer to this question. We are a species called Homo sapiens. Today, Homo sapiens is the only living member of the genus Homo. We are primates, and our closest living relative is the chimpanzee. We are mammals. We are vertebrates, which refers to having a spine and internal skeleton. We are animals, and frankly, we are one of many living organisms on this planet. All these living organisms have gone through many steps in order to get to the point that they're in today, including us. The planet and its environment have changed many times, and these changes, along with organisms adapting to them, is the reason we exist and function the way we do today. Evolution is the driving process of life. So looking at ourselves through the perspective of evolution can be of great necessity when it comes to understanding what's important to us. So today we will look into 4 different aspects of evolution, how it has influenced us, and how it relates to us today. These 4 are water, energy, oxygen, and reproduction. Now let us begin. This planet that we live on is called Earth, but it also goes under the nickname the Blue Planet due to its vast oceans, rivers, and lakes, which engulfs around 71% of its surface. Life here is believed to have originated in the oceans through chemical reactions. And from what we can see, all living organisms are made up of and require water. These new living organisms, they needed to take up certain components in order for them to function properly. They probably did this by passively taking up these components through their environment. So gaining energy as we know it today came later on. But eventually, around 2.7 to 3.5 billion years ago, cyanobacteria, also known as blue-green algae, began to use the process called photosynthesis. They were the first ones using it, and simply explained, it's using the energy from the sun, carbon dioxide, and water to create glucose. This newly gained energy resource made eventually way for other living organisms to seek out energy by predating on the life forms that produce this glucose. The process of photosynthesis also led to big changes in the world. It creates the vital byproduct oxygen, which of it was only a little in the world before. But millions of years later, the Great Oxidation event happened, which refers to a huge increase in oxygen in our atmosphere. But oxygen is not all good. It's actually quite a reactive and dangerous molecule for living organisms. So the early life forms, they had to seek refuge in low oxygen level environments. But some of them got adaptations that not only protected them from the molecule, it made way for them to use oxygen. This was key for evolution of more complex life forms. With organisms' new complexity, the old way of reproduction through cell division and duplication was left behind, and reproduction through genetic exchanges became more common. Genetic exchanges leads to larger variation in the new individuals, and larger variations lead to higher chances of adapting to new environments. This was the starting point for one of evolution's most important drivers, and is one of the reasons why we see so many different life forms with different adaptations that live together on this planet. We humans are one of these complex creatures, and the processes that I just explained are also complex, but they are key to understanding why we function the way we do. So this is a very broad and quite simple view on evolution, because it can feel so overwhelming with the different time scales and everything that has happened. And there is quite a lot of things that have happened that I haven't gone through and I don't intend to go through, and especially regarding our relationship to the different aspects. It would take an eternity to go through, but it can at least give a sense of understanding. But to bring this a little bit closer to us, I'm gonna make a guess. From the beginning of this video until now, you have probably gone through the unconscious process of breathing several times. This is a vitally important process and a part of our respiratory system, which in the first step is for us to take in air into our lungs and distribute the oxygen into our bodies. And there is also quite a high chance, now that I pointed it out, that you breathe consciously, meaning you think about breathing. But as soon as you go by your day, start thinking about other things, get focused on something, your body will actually take control again. How our respiratory system have evolved is just one expression for life forms to take up oxygen. Adapting to taking in oxygen is displayed in many different ways. Insects have small openings in their bodies called spiracles. These openings lead to a tube system called trachea, which distributes the oxygen into their bodies. Fish that live in water, they have to use other methods to get the oxygen. Fish tend to use gills, which form a large surface area for water to flow through, and thereby picking up oxygen from the water directly to the blood. Oxygen is something that we constantly need in order to survive. But there are other things that we need less frequently, that the body signals to us when it needs it. Maybe you feel a bit dry in your mouth. This feeling, it motivates you to refill water to your system. We consist of around 60% water, which we need to keep relatively balanced for us to even function properly. Without it, we would experience it literally being difficult to do anything. And without it, eventually we will die. Depending on the time of day you watch this, you can either feel quite content, or maybe there's a slight feeling of emptiness in your stomach. This is also a type of signals that motivates you to refill resources and gain energy. And in our case, that means getting hold on some food. And food, as a topic, it has become very messy and emotionally invested, so I will try to just keep it to the point. We humans are omnivores, which means that we are opportunistic. We can gain energy by eating and digesting life forms on the very bottom of the food chain, the ones that create the energy, creating the glucose. You know, the ones using photosynthesis. These are the plants. But we can also do the same by eating organisms that eat other organisms. These are animals and fungi. One thing that's quite amazing about being an opportunistic eater is the fact that we're not highly adapted to eat one specific thing. We can instead eat what is available for us right now. This is perfect in a changing climate and for us to be able to adapt to live almost anywhere. What we eat has even led to certain genetic changes in some populations in order to digest the food better, like lactose or diets high in fat content. But for many of us that don't have this genetic variation, it means that it's very important to eat a large variation of foods in order to get the essential properties that they hold. So the most important part about eating is not how it tastes or whether you like it or not. What is important is that our bodies need macronutrients like carbohydrates, proteins and fats, and also micronutrients like vitamins and minerals. But not just that. Do you remember those early life forms that did not adapt to this oxygen-rich environment? Some of them actually adapt to live inside animals' guts. Those together form the complex microbiome that we have inside of us, and they actually help us to digest certain foods better. It's important for us to keep this microbiome healthy with eating a varied diet, because we have seen correlations between the microbiome's health and our own overall health. So if we get too much of something or too little of something or are imbalanced, it can lead to physical diseases like cardiovascular disease and diabetes. But it's also believed to be linked to some mental diseases like depression. So food is without a doubt very important. And it takes quite a lot of it to support the vast amount of humans of today. Through our reproduction, our global population size have reached around 7.8 billion people. We could consider ourselves quite a successful species. I mean, we have reached this huge amount of people. We have adapted to live normal lives on almost all continents. And depending on the conditions we live under, we have gone through genetic changes in order to handle them the best way we can. So if we can be seen as a successful species, why do I feel that it's very important to share this perspective? There's a lot of scientific research pointing towards the fact that many lifestyles of today are not compatible with how we have evolved. We have become so engulfed in our cultures and our beliefs of what's important to us. We have forgotten what's true about ourselves. The fact that we are biological products of millions of years of adaptations, that we are animals, and that we function the way we do because of complex mechanisms inside of us. But I do believe that we can learn by taking a step back and, at least on occasion, observe and let go of our own cultural values. And also by accepting our place in the huge network of things that are required for this planet to function the way it does today. We can start to invite these changes by learning to appreciate these 4 evolutionary aspects of our own lives. We can learn to not view a day of rain as an inconvenience for you as an individual. We can start looking at it as a process, the very important process that keeps us and many species on this planet alive. We can start viewing water as a limited resource whenever we use it, and also be very thankful that we have such easy access to it. And for the sake of our biological health, we should drink when we feel the need for it. And in regards of energy, we can learn to not view diet as something to argue about, or live with the belief that what it comes down to is filling our stomachs, ridding ourselves of the feeling of hunger. What is the most important part is to feed our bodies with a large variation of nutrients in order for us to function properly, have energy, and stay healthy. Depending on your upbringing, your life, what you have been eating throughout your existence, you have somewhat adapted to this, and your microbiome have also adapted to this. So what is a good and healthy diet for you? That can vary a lot. And I know it can be very hard getting the understanding of what we should or should not eat, and to always see the correlation between our overall health and the food that we decide to eat. But learning and applying some basics can actually make a huge difference for your health, starting today or for your future self. We should be curious about food. We should learn and apply some basics, make smart choices for us and the environment, eat in moderation, and of course, never to forget to enjoy the food. We can also learn to see that the human reproduction system has led to this huge, immense population size, and that the choices of each and every individual culminating together have a huge impact on the planet and its environments. But seeing this from a positive light, we can also see that it's the individual that make the decisions. So therefore, it's the individual that decide the impact. I also think it's very important not to question or judge the people who decide to reproduce, but as important is to not question or judge the ones who decide not to either. And of course, we can make small and important changes in our daily lives, and as a group, as a collective, and as a species, in the end, we can accomplish great things. And finally, we have a reason to feel happy for each and every breath that we're taking. Our bodies tend to keep track on this process that keeps us alive. But in moments where we decide to take control of our breath, we can even learn to bring ourselves closer to the moment that we're in. And with that, calming our busy minds and help us to come closer to appreciating life. Alright, that will be it for this first part of this video. For the second and final part, I will try to wrap up this perspective neatly and also share some more important evolutionary aspects that we tend to overlook in our daily lives. And one of them is our nightly activity, sleep. So, just like this video took a while to make, I've had to learn a lot of new things like Adobe and animations and different programs. The second part will probably take a while too, because I make these videos and content on my free time. I also want to do my best and feel happy with the results that I put out. So therefore, no stress. But until next time, we can still think about and reflect on our own relationships to these 4 evolutionary aspects. And with our abilities to remake ourselves, we can even learn to appreciate them more. Since I didn't really share that much actual information in this video, I shared more the idea of this perspective. I would like to encourage you to continue wanting to learn about this and searching for information. And one very good way of getting information and learning new things is through reading. So I have a good book recommendation. This book is called The Story of the Human Body by Daniel Lieberman. He goes through the different evolutionary steps and adaptations we humans have gone through in order to get to the point that we're in today. So this is a perfect opportunity to get a little bit better insight in why we function the way we do today. So I heavily recommend that one. Finally, if you like this video and it resonates well with you, please consider liking and subscribing. I would really appreciate it. But until next time, hej då!